The cruiser tank MKV or A13 Mk III Covenanter was a British cruiser tank of the Second World War. The Covenanter was the first cruiser tank design to be given a name. Designed by the London, Midland and Scottish Railway as a better armoured replacement for the cruiser Mark IV, it was ordered into production in 1939 before pilot models were built. Problems with the design became apparent only after production was underway. The tank equipped various British armoured divisions for home defence and training. It was named after the Covenanters, a Scottish religious faction at the time of the Wars of the Three Kingdoms. In 1938, the War Office had issued a requirement for a new, better armoured, heavy cruiser tank to replace the cruiser IV. Nuffield's A16 design was found to be too expensive in 1939, a cheaper and lighter cruiser tank, under General Staff Specification A13 Mk III Cruiser Mark V, was chosen to be developed. From these, a design using many sloped surfaces was chosen to keep the weight low. The engine, which was to be specifically designed for it, was to deliver at least 300 horsepower. Design work was by the London, Midland and Scottish Railway Company, who had no prior experience in the design and production of fighting vehicles and had been invited to participate under a government policy that British companies should develop skills in expectation of war. The design assumed a welded hull rather than the usual riveting. The turret was designed by Nuffield, with Henry Meadows designing a new low-profile engine for it. On the 17th of April 1939, before a prototype was produced, the first 100 vehicles were ordered from the LMS. Additional orders soon followed, with English Electric and Leyland Motors joining the production effort, for a final production total of 1,771 Covenanters. Due to the expectation of war, the design was ordered off the drawing board. To meet the engine requirement, a horizontally opposed 12-cylinder design was used. The unusual arrangement, although tested in mock-up form first, when combined with the rushed design resulted in serious problems with engine cooling. These problems meant that the Covenanter would not be employed in the North African campaign. Instead, Crusader and American tanks were sent to Africa, while the Covenanters remained at home. The welded design used 2 layers of armor plate, the inner being of steel that would weld readily without losing its properties. This 2-plate system was retained when the design reverted to riveted construction. The use of rivets, steel wheels instead of aluminium and an increase in armor specification to 40 mm at the front of hull and turret increased the weight to a level where the tank suspension was at maximum load, leaving no room for later development of the design. Although the Covenanter was needed, production continued even when newer, better tank designs were waiting for space on production lines. By late 1943, the Covenanter was considered too weakly armed and armored to deal with new German tanks. It was decided that neither problem could be addressed without significant changes in the design, so the tank was declared obsolete and all vehicles except the bridge layer variant were to be scrapped. Except for a few trial vehicles, Covenanters were never deployed outside the UK. The Covenanter was used to re-equip the 1st Armoured Division, which had lost most of its tanks in the fall of France. When the 1st was sent to Egypt, the tanks were transferred to the 9th Armoured Division. It is not clear if these tanks were ever used in combat, although the unit markings indicate they may have been deployed alongside Kingforce with their new 6-pounder equipped Churchill Mk III tanks. Covenanters were also used to equip the Guards Armoured Division in 1942 and elements of the 1st Polish Armoured Division when it was formed in the UK. They were replaced before these units were sent to the front line, except for a few bridge layers that both divisions retained and used in their advance through Belgium and the Netherlands. Observation post tanks were issued to artillery units to carry forward observation officers for Royal Artillery batteries. In an armoured division, there were 2 op tanks for each raw or field battery. Command tanks were similar to op tanks, but had only 2 number 19 sets, one on the regiment radio net and the other on the brigade net. Covenanter bridge layers were used by the 1st Czechoslovak Armoured Brigade during the Siege of Dunkirk from October 1944 to May 1945. Covenanter Mk II, Mark I production modified by addition of radiator-mounted oil cooler. Command version existed with dummy gun and 2 number 19 radios. Covenanter Mk III, new production with twin oil coolers installed either side of the engine. Observation post version existed with dummy gun, 2 number 19 radios and number 18 radio. Covenanter bridge layer, Covenanter hull fitted with a vehicle-launched bridge. Covenanter ARV-MKI, armored recovery vehicle based on turretless Covenanter hull. A single Covenanter gun tank is preserved at the Tank Museum, Bovington, in the United Kingdom. The Tank Museum also has the turret from an early Covenanter pilot model. A second Covenanter tank was recovered in May 2017 from the same farm, now the site of Denby's vineyard. The partially buried, wrecked hulls of 2 other tanks may be seen at Titchwell Marsh in Norfolk, UK. Now a Royal Society for the Protection of Birds nature reserve, the area was formerly a tank gunnery range and the Covenanters were likely used as targets.